Hello and welcome to Behind the Story. I'm Eli Sherman. This week, I'm joined by my co-host, 12 News anchor, Kim Kalunian, and our guest is Chief Investigative Reporter, also my boss, Tim White.
I hope this goes well.
Yeah, exactly. On the hot seat myself this week. Tim, welcome to the show. We invited Tim on not because he's my boss, but because both Tim and Kim have done just incredible reporting on Nicholas Alahverdian. And he, of course, is the infamous Rhode Island conman who went on to fake his own death, get picked up by Scottish authorities, and extradited back to the United States for a rape allegations that he's now on trial for. But to start, Tim, I was thinking that it would be helpful, because you've covered him for years and years and years,
Yep.
To talk a little bit about who he was when he was living in Rhode Island.
He was an outspoken critic of the state's social welfare system, DCYF. He was in the DCYF program himself for many years, and when he became a legislative page at the State House, he used that position to try and lobby for change at DCYF, particularly focusing in on the practice of the agency shipping some of the kids out of state. And he testified, and there's no way to actually check it, but based on his words, that he spent time in Florida, he spent time, I think, in Nebraska and other places across the country, and also alleged that he was both physically, sexually, and emotionally abused while under the umbrella of DCYF. He ultimately sued the organization in federal court. And it reached an out-of-court settlement. There's been some reporting that DCYF paid $70,000 in that settlement, but they won't say. That's never been officially confirmed. But he made very strong relationships up on Smith Hill and the State House, and he would often be the subject of news stories here at Channel 12 and interviewed on Channel 10 and the Providence Journal, Channel 6, all of them. He made the rounds with media, mainly focusing on these topics.
And we should mention, I mean, this is a show about news, and he was one of these characters that really would reach out to reporters. He was very interested in being in the spotlight on his advocacy work, but we heard from him, you heard from him, Tim, a lot, right? And people in this building would hear from him a lot.
Yeah, he'd call all the time. I mean, he would just be pitching stories all the time, demanding, demanding an interview to be done. He'd call our former colleague, Walt Buteau, probably daily. I'm not even exaggerating on that. I mean, he'd always have a story and looking for media attention consistently.
Yeah, and we were looking at some file video of one of his sit-downs, I believe, with Walt inside of our building here. And I want to get to the part where we all found out that he died, or supposedly passed away. And there was, I guess, like a little bit of confusion at the time when people started getting these phone calls from this woman saying he passed away, and there was this obit published, and some people were like, what is really happening here? But I think for the most part, people thought, okay, yeah, well, that's sad. He passed away. I mean, am I getting that right?
Yeah, you're getting it right. I mean, I think there was always a question mark over it. I remember Walt and I talking about it because we had law enforcement sources that were telling us on background, look, I'd be very careful about that. We think he might still be alive. And then you dovetail that with the bizarre conversations with his supposed wife that Walt had mainly. And Walt, he said it sounded like it could have been his voice. It was actually Alahverdian, but with a voice changer and all of that. And there was no way to confirm the actual death. He claimed he died, or the wife claimed that he died in February of 2020 of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But there was just an online obituary that I think we know now was written by Nicholas Alahverdian himself. So it was kind of a tough story to report out. And again, we were getting the back channel information that law enforcement was looking at him as faking his own death to try and escape these charges out of Utah.
Right, he came down with some very awful cancer or something.
Yeah, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And in the wife, I keep putting it in air quotes, but would get so mad, when news outlets wouldn't run the story, and would send these really angry emails and things like that. And again, I think we know now that, well, we do know now that was him.
Right. And there were, as you mentioned, Walt covered this as well very closely. And when I first joined 12 News, I remember him telling me this bizarre story about these phone calls that I didn't know about because this wasn't a beat that I covered. Mm-hmm. But we got really into trying to figure out, okay, if this guy's still alive, how can we confirm that with law enforcement? And something that Tim and I do a lot in the investigative unit is that we ask for the records of people's FBI files after they die. That's available to anyone who wants to ask for it under...
We should say we do this professionally, not as a hobby.
Well, it's a little bit of both. Come on.
That could be true.
That's a good point. But figures that we think may have been looked at by the FBI or had some interaction with law enforcement federally over the years, we ask for their file because oftentimes, Tim, we find just really interesting things that never came public because they were only being looked at by the FBI. And so I asked for the file from the feds for Nicholas Alahverdian, sending them, as you need to do, the obit that was written, as we now know, probably by him, to try and get them to deny it, which would have been sort of a backhand way of them confirming that, in fact, he was not dead, or they didn't think he was dead. And the feds, in their own clever way, did deny it, but they made strongly clear that they weren't confirming or denying the existence of whether or not he was alive or not. It was clever on their part, I must say.
And real quick, we do know that federal authorities were involved in this investigation. I think Rhode Island State Police played a big part of it, but because there was already an indication he was in the United Kingdom, that he went overseas, you had to get federal authorities involved to try and track him down and extradite him back to the U.S.
Right. And so there was this long period of time. Well, I guess he died in 2020, and then he ended up getting found in 2022. We're going to get into that after the break. We're going to look at when he got caught in Scotland and also the court case that's currently underway in Utah. Stick with us. Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Story. I'm Eli Sherman, joined by my co-host, Kim Kalunian, and our guest this week is Chief Investigative Reporter at 12 News, Tim White. We are talking about Nicholas Alahverdian, the con man who faked his own death. I incorrectly said before the break that he was caught in 2022. It was actually early 2021, I believe, and he was found in Scotland where he had assumed a new identity. And he was found because he went into the hospital for COVID-19, and they were able to link him at that point to some DNA testing back in here related to a criminal case that we'll talk about in a little bit.
They actually first linked him through fingerprints and, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, tattoos. He really fought the DNA testing aspect until he was in court.
Yeah, and that was actually, that fight, now that you mention it, was part of a package that Kim did, where she actually interviewed him while he was still very adamantly trying to prove that he was this man named Arthur Knight. We're just going to play a quick package and then I have a question for you out of that, Kim. Take a listen.
Wearing an oxygen mask and speaking with an accent.
I am Arthur Knight.
The man who says he was born Nicholas Brown in Ireland in November 1986 has no proof of that story. He blames it on Irish law and lack of access to his birth certificate or records from early life. But prosecutors in the U.S. say they have compelling evidence that the man who now calls himself Arthur Knight is in fact Nicholas Rossi, also known as Nicholas Alahverdian, or a slew of other aliases, a man now wanted for an alleged rape in 2008. Knight denies that he is Alahverdian and says he's never even been to the United States.
Because I have similarities to a person in life and in youth. That doesn't necessarily mean that I am.
So he says, it doesn't necessarily mean I am that person at the end of that bite. Kim, I want you to talk a little bit about this interview, but first, you're a reporter. You got to check your gut and all things that you're doing. Did you find him convincing?
I always try to go into every story, like you say, Eli, with an open mind and a critical eye. No, I think part of the the reason that I didn't find him convincing, there were so many reasons, frankly. I hadn't really engaged with Nicholas before any of this. I knew of his name, frankly, because he has an Armenian surname like I do. And so I was sort of aware of him, but hadn't spoken to him before this very interview. The email exchanges that we had were odd, to put it lightly. In some of the emails, he had said that, you know, the Utah district attorney did not have the authority to take his DNA. And then during the interview, which you saw part of there, he said they didn't have a DNA sample. And so I said, which is it? And he said, thank you for raising that point. Clearly, I was catching him in moments where he didn't have his own story straight. And then as you can see in that video, he had his arms bared. Right. And you had mentioned, Tim, the fact that the tattoos were something that linked him to his former identity. And in a previous interview that was done in person with a BBC reporter, he wore long sleeves and refused to bare his arms.
Right, he said, I'm so tired.
Right, oh, I can't lift my sleeves. But with me, over Zoom, you don't see any tattoos on those bare arms, which raises the question, did he have some makeup on them? I mean, so there were a lot of, there were certainly a lot of points that made me go, I just don't know if I can buy this hook, line, and sinker.
And it's not just, you know, he intentionally wore I think we can say this with authority, the short sleeves to try and show that. Those tattoos were captured in a Pawtucket police booking photo from a domestic violence charge in 2010. That's how authorities had them, very distinct. I think one of them was an anchor.
Yes,
he put himself in front of a bright television.
Yes.
He had the mask, always wore that mask, and he had a very distinct gap in his front teeth that Nicholas Alahverdian had as Arthur Knight. My favorite part of all of it, though, is, you know, your viewers that are watching this that are from Rhode Island will recognize that name, because Arthur Knight was a DJ at WPRI. Sir Arthur Knight. And you just have to wonder if Alahverdian used that name because he used to listen to this guy on the radio as a kid growing up in Rhode Island.
Right. And we should mention he no longer is trying to prove to everyone that he that he is Arthur Knight. He is on trial currently in Utah under, I think it's Nicholas Alahverdian, but he's got so many
Nicholas
Rossi.
It's Nicholas Rossi. He asked the judge to change it back to Alahverdian. The judge said no. I don't know why, but
well, maybe that's the assumed identity he was using while he was in Utah. But Tim, I want you to talk about extradition, because when they found him in Scotland, there was a big fight over trying to bring him back to Utah for these rape charges, and he fought those quite a bit.
Oh yeah, he did. And we should also make a note that, as you said, the trial's ongoing as we all talk right now, but the jury has the case now. So when people are watching this at home, there could be a verdict in this case. So go to the website, to WPRI.com. Our colleague Alex Leslie is working on that. Yeah, he fought tooth and nail to be extradited from the UK to the United States. It went on for over a year. It might have even gone on for over 2 years, if I remember correctly. He burned through attorneys over and over and over again, and really dug his heels in that he was Arthur Knight and tried to fight it. And then ultimately the courts had enough of him in the UK and shipped him back to the United States. And as you point out, when he got to Utah, and you're seeing him in court right now for this case, he decided to just give up that ruse and just stipulate to the court, yep, I am Nicholas Rossi.
Right. And I want to talk about the media frenzy that's been around it, because it has, he, like we mentioned off the top of the show, he was always a figure here when he was being critical of DCYF. He really reached out to all reporters. But what happened after he was discovered, because it's such a strange story of a man who fakes his own death and goes by a different identity, and all these different things are so strange, it no longer was just a Rhode Island story, but became really international.
By the way, let me just say it. I think if you're trying to run from the law and hide, the last thing you should do is give TV interviews.
Oh, and he gave so many.
That's my point. He talked to you, obviously, we just saw it, but so many interviews. And that, to me, was one of those moments watching it that mirrored for the people in Rhode Island, and especially in the press corps, it really mirrored the Nicholas Alahverdian we knew, like eager to reach out to reporters eager to get that interview, tell his side of the story, which was a total lie the entire time. But it was one and the same. It was the same playbook. Arthur Knight had the same playbook as Nicholas Alahverdian.
Yeah, he just didn't seem, in the interview that I did with him and in the many others that he did and in the emails we exchanged, like someone who was being framed for a crime he didn't commit. He didn't sort of have that paranoid approach to everything. Like, I'm an innocent man, and this is, it was more of like, he had a story to tell of his own. And one of the reasons that he gave to me for trying to like reschedule or not do the interview was the fact that he already had TV crews coming to his apartment. And he's like, well, I'm too busy with too many TV crews, which again, as you say, if you're trying to hide from law enforcement, probably not the best course of action.
I think the enduring mystery is just real quick here.
I think I have the same question.
Miranda.
Yes.
So that's his supposed wife who's sitting next to him
Right there
in
with
that
him.
interview. And, we don't know. We can't get into her head, but you have to think she knew the true story. Maybe he had convinced her that he was being wronged by the judicial system in the United States and she wanted to protect him, or maybe she was in danger herself. Don't know. But reporters overseas have tried to get that answer, and we just have no idea why she stuck by him for so long.
Yeah, I've tried to email her again at the joint email address that I used to contact him. It bounces back. She's the biggest question mark, I think, at the end of the day here.
Totally agree.
All right. Well, we could probably talk about Alahverdian all day.
Yes,
We could.
And it's just a story that's been going on for years. Like Tim said, our colleague Alexander Leslie is covering the trial very closely. There may be a verdict at any point. So go to our website for both that information along with all of Tim's great reporting over the years, as well as Kim's interview. When we come back, Kim and I will talk about the stories we wish we wrote. Stick with us. Hello and welcome back to Behind the Story. I'm Eli Sherman here with my co-host, Kim Kalunian. Kim entering into the final segment of our show and going over the stories we wish we wrote, which are the other stories that we saw in the region that really caught our eye this week. What grabbed your eye this week?
So the Providence Business News, Christopher Allen over there has a write-up of a new report that just came out, and the headline here is Rhode Island child care providers not complying with health and safety regulations, which is just such, it raises such alarm bells for any parent out there. Child care is already hard to find,
Yes,
very expensive, and then you read a headline like this. So basically, the lead of the story is alarming levels of noncompliance with health and safety regulations among child care providers were revealed in a new report released by the state auditor. And among the findings are that there's no statutory or regulatory residency restrictions in the state for sex offenders who are living near child care facilities. Those kind of laws exist in dozens of other states.
Yeah, I think it was 20 other states.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot here in the report to digest. And I know, Eli, you're going to be looking into it as well, but certainly not the kind of headline that you want to see.
Yeah, and we should tell folks that, when we talk about child care facilities, that could be anything from a daycare inside a facility to what is often the case, which is, in bigger cities, is inside someone's home.
Right.
It's like a mother who's at home anyways and agrees to take over, and they're supposed to have this great oversight from the state. And what this report really found, and Chris did a good job, was highlighting all of the problems that actually exist, and then the lack of oversight, which is supposed to be there as a catch-all. So good story there. I love this story, Kim. This is from Nish Colley, I think I'm saying her name right, Providence Journal reporter, covers Providence, does a great job. She has a story, $50 bills are popping up around Providence thanks to an Instagram account, how it works. And I'll say that I actually saw this on social media before I read her story,
Yes.
but there is a guy that's walking all over the city, and he's hiding $50 bills inside of random things like pieces of trash or like a lockbox or and he shows little clues on social media of where people can find them. And the first one that I saw, I was like, oh, that's right next to the Providence train station. I know exactly where that is. But then there's 30,000 likes on it, and I'm like, that $50 is gone. But it's a really fun story, and really people should go check it out for clues on how you can grab $50.
Yeah, and I love that she found the guy who's behind this viral sensation. Like, those are the kind of interviews that we all want to get. So
yeah, and it was nice too. He asked to stay anonymous because he's like, I don't really want this to be about me. I think this is just kind of a fun thing.
And he's funding it himself out of his own pocket. Right. So, like, it's a crazy story.
All right, you have another fun one.
Okay, this will surprise no one that I chose this story. I think we've got a theme here of like amusement parks and nostalgia. Savannah Dunning, also at the Providence Journal, wrote about Rocky Point's Corkscrew and Cyclone weren't the only roller coasters in Rhode Island, and she made a list. So we've got the Corkscrew and the Cyclone, of course, at Rocky Point. Crescent Park had the Zephyr and the Flying Fish. And there was also a roller coaster called the Bullet at Easton's Beach, which I had never heard of before. And the saddest part, Eli, is that now we have zero. No roller coasters in Rhode Island.
Makes me think of the Cyclone on Coney Island in New York City.
We need a Rhode Island Coney Island.
Yeah, and to say everything sort of comes back, I thought a really, really interesting fact in that story was that a lot of them were blown out by the Great Hurricane in 1938.
Yes.
So they existed. Then comes this huge hurricane, knocks them all down, as it did trees and everything else made out of wood.
Homes, yeah.
And it was only Rocky Point, actually, I think, that wanted to bring it back.
I think that's right. Yes, because it was around for a while after that. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, I wish we still had something like that somewhere, even though I don't ride roller coasters.
I was going to ask, have you ever been on the Cyclone in Coney Island? Because it's the scariest.
I don't do roller coasters.
Ride.
I like amusement parks. I think they're great. I'm not going to get on one of those.
You feel like it's going to fall over because it's made of wood?
Yeah,
so
yeah. That's the thrill.
That's the fun of actually drawing back from it. But we'll agree to disagree on that. Real quick, the second one that I have is from a team of reporters at the New Bedford Light. It's called New Bedford's Growing Hispanic Population Lags in Voter Turnout. And this is a data-heavy story, so if you like nostalgia, I like data.
Every time.
They did a really good job of taking a look at voter records and seeing that while the city has about 0.25% of its population made up of Hispanic people, they're not really turning out, and they get into some of the frustrations there. But I thought it was a really clever way because we saw a huge shift in the last presidential election in like heavy Hispanic living communities towards more Republican voting. And this is sort of showing how it actually, a lot of things are turning off Hispanic voters in some of these elections. So they did a really, really good job. Data heavy. People should check it out. All right. That is all the time that we have this week. Kim, for people who want to see these full episodes and our past episodes, you can go to WPRI.com. You can also find it on YouTube. We should mention that this is also now downloadable for a podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Next week, we'll have another reporter come on, probably not my boss, and talk to them about what was good in the market. But for now, for Kim Kalunian, I'm Eli Sherman. Thanks for watching Behind the Story.